thanks for tuning in. I wanted to remind you of our Road to 1,000 Subscribers giveaway that we have going on our YouTube channel. If you subscribe and have a public profile, you'll be entered to win a free RX Smart Gear original jump rope. You'll get to pick the pattern of the handles, the color and weight of the cable, and you'll be getting one of the best-selling, best-performing jump ropes out there. Every time we hit a new century mark with the number of subscribers to our channel, we'll randomly select a new winner. And our friend Dave Newman is going to throw in a little something extra for each winner. So a special thanks to our sponsor, RX Smart Gear, to Dave Newman for being such a great partner, and to you for being a loyal listener. Good luck, and I hope you are our next winner.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Clydesdale Fitness and Friends. My name is Scott Schweitzer, I'm your host, and I am the Clydesdale, and we love to do fitness, and these are my friends. And so we have Amy and Kat, and then we have a special guest today, someone that Amy and I know from our home gym, and his name is Sean Clifton. And Sean is a veteran, and we're going to kind of explore his life through that and a big event that happened during that, and how he's come back, and CrossFit is a big part of his life today. So I'm going to let Amy lead this interview, and Amy's going to take it away.
All right. Well, so welcome, Sean. We're glad to have you on here today.
Thank you.
So just to start, though, your title is you're a Master Sergeant.
Yep. U.S. Army retired. That's right.
U.S. Army retired. Special Forces, Green Beret.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And a Wounded Warrior.
That's correct.
All right. So before we get into the story, I wanted to kind of go to your background and kind of find out what was your athletic background growing up, maybe high school, pre-high school, all that kind of stuff.
Sure. Yeah. I'm one of those cases where always athletic, never an athlete. I think I dabbled in just about every sport from, little league baseball to, wrestling and track and football and things like that. Was never good at anything, really. I just enjoyed kind of getting out and trying out new stuff. But if I were to identify with a couple sports in school, it was probably cross country, track. I was a bit of a long, slow distance guy, as a middle school, high school kid. And I really didn't get into the kind of explosive functional fitness until years later in the military.
Yeah. And then, so after high school, you started at Ohio State. Is that right?
Attempted.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I think I've heard you say that you enjoyed some of the social aspects of school and not so much on the schooling aspects of that.
Yeah. So, a longer interview would capture the theme of irresponsibility in my youth, but I definitely was one to entertain and be entertained as a youth, as a struggling youth. And then Ohio State campus in the mid 90s, captured that to a T. First bar I ever snuck into was on campus at Papa Joe's. First time I used a fake ID was on Ohio State campus. I mean, the list goes on, but that irresponsibility really is what led me into the military at a certain point.
Well, Sean, okay. I can truly identify with the irresponsibility. The first bar I snuck into was the Thirsty Eye on Lane Avenue. Right. And Ohio State was rocking in the late 80s as well.
Yeah, cool.
Totally. And so then at 19, that's when you entered the Army, is that correct?
Yeah. So, so I graduated from high school, 1991, 18, kind of bounced around, moved around. And, after a couple of years of really not making any progress and really spiraling down into this hole of irresponsibility again, I was that recruit that was really the old school, join the Army or go to jail kind of thing. And, I did it completely on my own. I was at a point in my life at the age of 19 and 20 years old. 20 was really when I joined. 19 is when I started to research it. It was either kind of give up on living on my own and move back home with mom kind of deal, or explore other options and try to be responsible. And probably the most responsible decision I ever made, particularly at that age, was talking to the recruiter, signing the contract, and going to basic training. And that would have been 1994 when all of that happened.
How'd your mom feel about that?
It was a big surprise to everybody. Everybody knew I was a bit of a wild child, from the age of, in my teenage years. And then I didn't tell anybody about it. I did all the research myself and all this kind of stuff. And I just broke the news to mom first. She was proud and nervous and all that kind of stuff. But obviously had her blessing, and the fact that I did that was kind of a tip of the hat to being more responsible. So, and then just lots of family support from that point forward.
It feels like a very mature decision for a 19-year-old who you self-described as being irresponsible. So,
yeah, and I'm labeling it as responsible, but in essence, it's probably was my only choice. Right. So. Truth be told, it was probably really the only thing I could do other than just kind of really give up and just go back home or whatever. But, I was trying to be this grown up, but at the same time, I was just getting mixed up into, the social scene.
Yeah. Was it easy to choose Army over the other branches, or was that the only recruiter around, or how that worked?
I had all of the stereotypes, I knew the Army had the National Guard, and I knew that if I went active duty, then I could come back home and be in the National Guard. And I knew that the GI Bill was very friendly. I knew that the Ohio National Guard had tuition assistance, and really the driving force behind everything was just how am I going to pay for school if and when I'm able to get back in good graces with the academia. And I knew the Army had a lot of opportunities. I knew my uncle was in the Army. Both of my grandfathers were World War II veterans in the Army. So, not that I have any kind of real lineage, to military service. I think that was the closest to my heart at the time.
And so then you did use that, took advantage of the GI Bill and
Yep.
went back to school. So where did you go? What did you study? What does that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was able to ultimately get a graduate degree, master's degree, completely paid for by Uncle Sam and my service, obviously. But I started out. I was a computer science guy. I was in the information technology arena. Before the whole Y2K stuff, back in the day of, Windows 95 and 98 and home networking and then the Wi-Fi boom and the Y2K boom. I was in that workspace in the late 90s and the early 2000s. And then a bit of a switch happened, which was September 11th, 2001. And then that event really changed the whole trajectory of my military career and my personal career and really what I wanted to do. So I was a bit of a computer nerd. I was the help desk guy that you would call, and I would come fix your printer or re-network, remap your drives or whatever, and was educated and experienced in that. And then all that changed September 11th, 2001.
And that kind of that event brought you into the special operations.
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
So I had completed my active duty tour, 3 or 4 years of active duty out in Oklahoma. I was an artillery guy, launching rockets and stuff like that, and finished that contract. got off of active duty, moved back home, went back to school, started back to school slow at Columbus State, and using the GI Bill with that, joined the Ohio National Guard. And when I was in the Guard, I was back into that information systems space. That was my job in the Army at that time, late 90s. But yeah, I was a conventional Army National Guard dude. And, but I was still very active in the fact of like the athletic side. So I was on the Ohio National Guard's biathlon team, where you're cross country skiing and shooting. I was on the National Guard biathlon team for a couple of years, 1999 and 2000. And on that team was a Green Beret, and he was a captain. And we did a couple biathlon events in Vermont and Wisconsin and Montana and stuff. And we're competing in these biathlon events. And I'm kind of hanging out with this Green Beret dude. I'm like, man, this guy's pretty cool. You know, he's fit. You know, he's telling me all these cool stories. I'm like, you know, that would be kind of cool if I ever decided to do that. So again, this is all pre 9/11, pre 2001. So at that point, I knew that the Ohio National Guard had a Special Forces unit in Columbus. So the seed had been planted. This would have been 99, 2000. And then kind of hanging out with this guy on the biathlon team. Well, fast forward to the summer of 2001. Okay, this is still pre 9/11. We're doing some summer biathlon training. So now I'm running and shooting, and we have all these kind of cool events that I'm a part of with the Ohio National Guard. So I decide, hey, I'm bored being a computer guy, at least in the National Guard. And I think I'm going to give this Special Forces thing a shot. So I started training with these Special Forces guys in the summer of 2001, just kind of weekend drills kind of deal. And that was pretty cool. Met a lot of cool guys. We're all rowdy, but we like to work hard, play hard kind of thing. That's definitely the type of person that seeks out this type of an occupation, right? Work hard, play hard. And then in September of 2001, when those towers fell, really everything was in place for me to make the decision to go Special Forces, special ops, watching those towers fall and being in the military, but really not being uber patriotic, right? I'm just kind of in the military as a part-time job and as college support. 9/11 really shook me, and it still gets me to this day. Thinking about the emotional impact of it, and I knew I had to do something, and the closest thing, the most tangible thing that I could do was join the Special Forces unit and try to do something about it, right? A bit of that Punisher mentality, and that's what I did. So I went to that unit. I'm like, look, man, what do I need to do to get in on this, serve my country to a different degree, and that be that protector or that fighter, that warrior was always a part of me. And it just really, everything fell into place. So September 11th, 2001, obviously the world changed. And then next thing I know, a couple months later in January of 2002, I'm down at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and it's freezing ass cold. And I got 70 pounds of stuff in a rucksack, and I'm figuring out how to navigate through the woods for 3 weeks, and that was selection. That was Special Forces selection in a nutshell. And that's the first phase of many to earning the Green Beret. And then I made it. I graduated and was offered the opportunity to continue to train through the entire Special Forces qualification course from that point forward.
Hey,
So,
Sean.
Sean, I have a question. Sorry. Sorry, Scott. So we talked about your mom being supportive of you, going in initially. certainly after 9/11, and the whole world changed, and when people were going into the military, it meant something very different at that point in time. And you said that you were definitely moved to do that. First part of the question, did you have any personal like ties to people that were victims? And B, how did your mom react to you sort of taking that next step, or your family?
So no personal ties, other than, first and second degree connections to those in the Pentagon that were working in the Pentagon when the Pentagon was hit also. Nobody in New York City that I knew personally. The flights in Pennsylvania and stuff like that. No direct connections to any of that, other than direct connections to other military personnel that were working in and around the Pentagon. As far as going back to mom, if you don't know much about me, I'm a passionate, emotional guy too. So it's just my excuse to be a big crybaby. But so again, moms are moms. They're worried, they're loving, they're supportive, and proud. So she was very, sending me her prayers, and be safe, be smart. Sean is always her advice. Be safe and be smart. And again, I think it was, my calling to do that. She felt that and was supportive, obviously, as well. But there's always a bit of fear, with all of that. And then when as we progress through this interview and we start to talk about my wife and what she thought about during deployments and things, there's just always that concern from your loved ones.
So I have a quick question, Sean. In the CrossFit world, we know a lot about the Navy SEALs because a lot of the leaders in CrossFit come from that endeavor.
Yep.
Did the Green Beret, do they have like a Hell Week or something that you have to go through, just like the Navy SEALs? What was that training like to get in there?
So much the same, not as publicized. Obviously, we have our interdepartmental rivalries, between Navy SEALs and some of the other special operations units. But where you envision the Navy SEALs, with the big log on their shoulders, and they're on the beach and they're getting their asses kicked, but they're working together. We have much the same thing. Ours is always much more woodland based than beach based. But that would have been that January selection that I was talking about. It's 3 weeks. It's divided into a lot of land navigation, a lot of being on your own. It's very much an individual. How's this guy going to handle stresses and decision making on his own, being responsible about it? That's of the 3 weeks. That's a couple weeks worth of very individually assessed physical feats that happen. But there is a bit of a Hell Week, and that's what they call Team Week. And during Team Week, which is a few days towards the end, a lot of guys have been weeded out, right? A lot of guys have been weeded out over the past 2 or 3 weeks, because you're sent off on these, 50, 100, 150 mile treks where you're navigating over terrain over the course of 4 to 5 days, and you're on your own, and you're trying to figure out how to get from point A to point B and really just kind of survive. But then Hell Week is just that kind of that BUDS or that Navy SEALs thing that you'll see. And they put us in sand pits, and we've got big logs, and we're working together, and we're carrying heavy things, we're moving heavy objects. And it's just hours and hours and days of them telling you, how big of a shitbag you are, to try to knock you down and just kind of get into your head, and see where that breaking point is. But that would be Special Forces selection in comparison to, let's say, Navy SEALs, their BUDS or their Hell Week.
So then at what point, when does Sarah come into this part of the story?
Yep. So she is a post 9/11 story.
Okay.
So it's summer of 2001. Again, was pretty rowdy, even though I was much more responsible and had a job and education and all that kind of stuff. I met Sarah in October of 2001, about a month after 9/11. I was hanging out at a bar with a buddy of mine on Bethel Road in Dublin. It was called the On Tap.
Yep, I know exactly which part.
I don't even know if it's there anymore. If it is,
No,
we should all go there at some point.
yeah.
But it was like a Wednesday night. It's free popcorn kind of night, and I'm hanging out, just me and my buddy, and we're looking at some pictures from a Labor Day weekend event that we were all hanging out at, and Sarah was at the end of the bar with one of her girlfriends. I'm hanging out with one of my buddies. Again, Wednesday night, no expectations, and one beer led to another, and then either she came over to me or I came over to her or whatever, and we just ended up hanging out and drinking that night. And then from that point forward, we kind of kept in touch. I was telling her that I was in the Army. I'm getting ready to go down to Fort Bragg, blah, blah, blah. She didn't know anything about that and probably didn't care, right? But we kept in touch, and then as the months went by, and then I'm to and from training, we're writing letters, like the old school, you're away on a military training thing and you're writing letters to one another. And again, a few months have gone by, and I'm in the second or third phase of this Special Forces training. And the second phase of Special Forces training is very much like Army Ranger School, if you're familiar with that, or have seen a documentary or something. And it just totally sucks. It's 7 or 8 weeks. And again, it's just a big suck fest. But you're learning some stuff, you're learning some tactics. But for the most part, the instructors are trying to weed you out and eliminate any potential weak point, moving forward, but particularly in the spring of 2002, because we're full on rolling into Afghanistan, right? We're hunting bin Laden and Al Qaeda and all that kind of stuff. So everybody that was in the Special Forces qualification course at that point, and the instructors knew, when we graduate, we're going to war. So it was super, super real. And they were just smoke. It was just a smoke fest, day after day after day. And I was at a breaking point at one point, and it just the end of a day, and it was just the worst day ever. And we're in the middle of the woods, and we've done our patrols and our tactical training for the day, and our instructors are just killing time. And what do they make us do? They make us dig holes. We're digging foxholes in the woods. And again, it's just to weed people out. I'm really at my wit's end, and not ready to quit, but man, it's starting to inch up into my thought process. And then they did a random mail call. And in the middle of this horrible time for me personally, we all drop our shovels and we gather around the instructor, and he pulls out this duffel bag full of mail. I mean, exactly like you would envision, right? Mm-hmm. He dumps out all these letters, and he'd hold up a letter and he'd call a dude's name out, and then he'd throw the letter and whatever. Well, I got a letter from Sarah, and I remember reading the letter, and it was a great letter. I still have all that stuff, but in the letter was a little tiny like taste tester of a like a mint, like a spearmint kind of thing, right? And I opened up the letter, and this little tiny sample peppermint thing, breath mint or whatever, was in it. And on the letter she wrote, I hope this gives you a little bit more energy to get through your day, or whatever. And so I pulled that out and I popped that thing in, and it was like instant Hercules strength. And it was at that point I knew, I'm like, you know what, I'm going to marry this girl. I'm going to marry this girl. And as soon as we got back and we were able to get on telephone, first person I called was my mom. I'm like, Mom, this girl is it. You know, she's the one. I'm going to marry this girl. And then a few months later, I asked her to marry me, and then the adventure begins.
What a great story. I love it.
Yeah, that's cool.
We're going to take a short break from our interview to tell you about our newest sponsor, Up Before You Coffee. They are an amazing coffee. It is delicious, has different little notes of chocolate and things like that. And it's really clean and crisp when you drink it in the morning. But they have a light roast. They also have a medium roast, as you can see there. We are so excited about this sponsorship. If you use Clydesdale 20, all caps, Clydesdale 20, you can get 20% off your order. Just go to upbeforeyou.com and order your coffee. It's delicious. You'll love it.
All right, so let's move to the event.
Yeah.
So you're in Southeast Afghanistan, and this is Memorial Day of 2009.
That's correct.
Okay. So it was a special operations mission, and you were critically wounded while doing a raid on a Taliban compound.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And the numbers that I've got from your website was that you were shot 5 times, 30 surgeries, 36 months in rehab, 21 awards, and 0 regrets.
Yeah, that's it's a bit of a exactly. Numbers are pretty accurate. You know, the shot 5 times thing, it's a bit of a gray zone. I was probably hit 6 or 7 times total, between, you know, helmet and body armor and rifle and things like that. But 2 of the rounds actually impacted me, actually made it through, and I was shot by two bullets. But we're fast forwarding to the spring of 2009. You know, we were ramping up on a mission for this Taliban leader, and we knew where the dude was going to be, and we knew when he was going to be there, and we rolled out to roll this dude up. And it was a pretty dynamic mission, because the difference between Army Green Berets and Navy SEALs is, Green Berets, we work with the indigenous troops there. So in Iraq, we worked with the Iraqi commandos, and in Afghanistan, we work with the Afghan commandos, and we are part of a force multiplier mission, where we're training these guys really to take care of their own business. You know, in essence, we're trying to work ourselves out of a job and make these guys the special ops guys. So we enter this village. Our Afghan commando partners were already in there. There was already a bit of a struggle with them trying to get into the village. We got there and were able to do that final push into the village. So we entered the village, and there was already a light firefight, a little bit of pushback, because it was a Taliban-controlled village. As soon as we got into the village, and we dismounted, and myself, along with 2 other of my special forces guys, are leading 3 tactical elements through this village. I'm leading 1, 2 other guys are leading 2 other elements through the village, looking for our target. We know he's in there. We don't know exactly which building he's in, which facility, which structure. So it's a small village, maybe 20, 25 small buildings, huts and stuff. And we're able to search through 2 or 3 buildings. We don't find our guy. And the last building that I decide to go into with my team is the building where we ended up finding that the dude was in there. So, and it's hard to describe this over a video conference thing, because I want to be able to explain kind of what's going on. But so we're moving through this village, and at this point, it's becoming a much more volatile and dynamic firefight. So not only are we looking for our dude from structure to structure, we're using these structures as a means of cover from the gunfire that's happening in the street. So I see the next building, I see the next door, and I'm like, okay, this is where we're going. We're going to this particular building, and I've got an interpreter with me who's I'm giving him commands to give to our tactical team, which is made up of primarily Afghan fighters. And I roll up to this door. I give it a kick. I'm kicking this door as hard as I can, and the door budges, but it doesn't quite give. I know one more kick, and we're going to roll into this building. Okay. Now, normally, now this is a late afternoon raid. Let me set the stage with why I kicked the door versus like sneaking in and blowing the door up and then rolling in. This is a late afternoon raid. We know the guy's only in there for a short amount of time, and we need to roll out and get him. Normally, we're doing the 0 dark 30 thing, where we're kind of sneaking into the village and we're doing dynamic breaching, and we're blowing down doors, and we're throwing flashbangs and things like that to add that element of surprise, which provides you a certain amount of control over your environment, that tactical environment. Well, we didn't have that. We were already engaged in a firefight. So we're just moving fast and staying aggressive. So I kick the door once, it doesn't go. I kick the door a second time. When I kick the door the second time, the door gives way. I start to roll into this structure, and then I walk into a wall of gunfire. And what we found out was there were over 22 fighters in this one particular structure, and they were rallied around this high value target that we were after, and they were protecting him. And the first person that was going to come through that door, they were going to light up, and that person happened to be me. So I kicked the door. I immediately started taking rounds. I knew I was hit low. I felt something hit low in the left hip. I could feel the rounds on the body armor. Okay, the chest plate. Things weren't really. I didn't quite know what was going on until my wrist got hit. Because I was going from looking down the barrel of my rifle, right? Both eyes open, scanning the area and engaging as necessary. And you've got your rifle up. My left hand is holding the barrel. Then my left wrist takes around, and then half of my wrist is blown out, and my hand folds over, and my rifle drops, and I'm staring at basically a stump of an arm with a hand dangling from it. And it was at that point I realized I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble. There's just lots and lots of visions and things that were running through my head, and I could go on and on about that, but just know I was thinking about the wife and thinking about my two boys back home. We had 2 boys at the time, 2 young boys, and one was almost 3 and one was almost 1, just a few months old, and thinking these are my dying thoughts, and something kicked in, and I don't know if it was rage or anger or whatever, but and I don't know if we can edit this out, but this is going to go a little bit rated R. But I can vividly remember saying, fuck this. Fuck this. I'm not dying in this fucking country, and I'm getting out of here, and I'm looking for a medic, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I stumble out of that doorway, and lots of things are happening. Other guys are throwing grenades. The team's kind of backing out. We're disengaging a bit from that building because there was so many rounds, so much activity coming out of that particular structure where I got shot at in the doorway. And I stumble out of that doorway, my hands dangling, and I basically fall to my knee. I look around, I get up, and I immediately see the medic on my team.
And this is Mark?
And this is, so there's two medics.
Okay.
So there's Mark and there's Matt.
Okay.
There's a junior medic and a senior medic. Mark is the senior medic. Matt was the junior medic. I run into Matt first. Okay, this is where the chain of events of crazy miracles start happening.
Okay.
So I see my hands dangling. I can see the blood and everything coming out of it. So I'm holding my wrist just as tight as I can hold my wrist to slow the bleeding down. So I lose the ability to kind of control my weapons and things like that. And I'm looking for cover and running behind dudes. And I see Matt, and I'm like, Matt, I'm hit. And I'm holding my dangling hand in front of him. And so right away he goes to work. He gets a tourniquet on my arm. I fall down at that point, and he drags me around to a side of a building that was the safest at the time that we had. And as soon as he drugged me around to the side of that building, and he starts doing some assessments on the injuries, Mark shows up. Okay, and he's the second, two of two medics on the team. So I'm like, oh my God, if there's any position to be in when you're in that dire need, it's to have two special forces medics hovering over you. So as crazy as things were, I was confident that these guys were going to take care of me. And I knew I just had to be calm and let these guys do their job. So Matt continued to work on the wrist and tourniquet that and stop the bleeding. They got everything off of me, all of my kit, and they're assessing. And it's when they're doing the body scan, they see the main problem. The main problem was I was hit in the waist. I took a round just below my body armor in my left waistline, right at the left belt area. That round punched through my waist. It bounced around inside my abdominal cavity and then punched out my right thigh, like my right butt cheek. So the damage that it did internally, it was completely wrecked. So I was bleeding out from the inside and the outside. And these guys found the entry wound, they found the exit wound, and they just start stuffing those wounds with gauze to try to get as much pressure built up in my abdominal cavity as possible. So what's happening is these guys are working on me, which is great. But everything's still happening, right? The mission's still going on, and the village is still exploding all around us. And what the team was able to do with battlefield leadership management and getting air cover for us and getting a medevac spooled up and all this different air support and ground support and stuff like that, everybody did exactly what they needed to do to not only get me out of there, but to accomplish the mission. I mean, we got our dude and a couple other dudes and like 50 Taliban and Al Qaeda fighters on that particular mission, and they were able to get the medevac birds to land on the objective and all this other stuff. So it was just such a dynamic environment, and so many decisions had to be made, so many split-second decisions, and it's just amazing what happened, it was amazing that they were able to get me off of the objective, off of the battlefield, and through the next levels of trauma care. Because there's no way I would have made it home if they were to ground convoy me back, a ground evac versus an air medevac. I was losing too much blood. Now there's lots and lots of miracles and lots of sidebar stories with this particular mission. You know, what happened during that mission and over the next couple hours, it is a movie in and of itself. I mean, it's crazy what happened, what the medevac pilots did, what the guys on the ground did, what the medics did, and then moving through the levels of trauma care. You know, they scooped me up into the medevac bird, and they moved me to the first trauma base. They did everything that they could do. They had to move me to another trauma base. They did everything that they could do, and through those levels of care, they were able to keep me alive for the next few hours until I made it to an actual hospital in Bagram, Afghanistan. But again, I could talk for an hour or two on that event, but just know that it was a crazy work day, right? Yeah, I mean, it was but we did exactly what we had to. They did everything that they could have possibly done just to save my life on the battlefield that day, and I think about it all the time. And the best thing that I can do to tell these guys thank you is to live my life to a higher personal standard, right? The worst thing that I could do is these guys risk their life to save my life, and then I come back home and I'd be a total shitbag. That would be the worst thing that I could do. The best thing that I could do is come home and be a good dad, a good husband, a good community member, you know, a good citizen, and let these guys know that I don't take every day for granted. You know, every day is special, and it's because of what they did that I'm able to do this. So that was the driving force of my recovery, was my family, my wife and boys, and then my teammates that saved my life.
So after that hospital in Afghanistan, you then eventually spent 6 months at the Walter Reed Army Medical Center.
Yep.
And your injuries were the left arm, the shattering the wrist, the left waistline with wounding the 5 major organs.
Yeah.
And then I think you said too that you had sciatic nerve and vascular damage
To the right leg. Yeah.
to the right leg. Okay. So what was your rehab like at Walter Reed?
Oh man, yeah. Again, you know, these interviews could be forever. Well, let me say this: that in the beginning, I was completely immobile. I didn't have any feeling or ability to move my left arm at all. My right leg was completely paralyzed. I had no core connection, right? I mean, my guts were, shot through, but what the surgeons and the surgical teams had to do to get in there and stop the bleeding and begin to repair the organ damage was, they cut my abdominal wall wide open. You know, they split my abdominal wall and they open it up, and so that they could get in there and work. So I had no core. I couldn't even sit up in bed under my own power. So I was completely helpless for the first few weeks, completely dependent on others. And for a guy like me that has a bit of control issues, I like to be in control, and, I like to be that leader on the battlefield and stuff, and to be completely helpless was just horrible, just a horrible experience. And these would be great questions for my wife, because, God love her. She took such good care of me, still keeping me alive, right, by my side in the hospital. traveling back and forth to Washington, D.C. from Ohio while still raising, 2 toddlers, and dealing with me and my piss poor attitude and on the hospital bed, because I'm bitching and moaning about everything, because I just got shot up and I don't have any control. So her patience during my recovery is just admirable. But yeah, so I can remember my very first goal. My very first goal was getting the left hand moving, and the occupational therapist brought in one of those little travel tubes of toothpaste, those little tiny tubes of toothpaste. And this was after several weeks of surgery. I was able to start beginning therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy. And the goal was to, with my left hand, thumb and forefinger, is to simply squeeze toothpaste out of that travel toothpaste tube. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it for weeks because I didn't have any control of this left hand. I had just minimal control. So that was the starting point. And that was a humbling reality check is, one, I can't even get out of bed under my own power. 2, I can't even squeeze toothpaste out of a travel tube, and it's like, oh my God. I knew it was going to be a long road, but as the weeks went by and the months went by, and we did lots of electrical stimulation type stuff to get nerves firing, and just lots of different occupational and physical therapy techniques over the course of a couple of years, really, before I was able to get back to a functional level of independence and a functional level of fitness. But it took a long time.
Yeah. Well, and I know you said too, so this event happened Memorial Day of 2009. Yeah. And by October 2010,
yeah,
you ran a marathon because your youngest son's first steps motivated you to walk again.
Yeah, so that's a pretty cool story too. Yeah, so so I spent the entire summer and early fall of 2009 in the hospital. And I was kind of released from the hospital, at least released from Walter Reed, because they were so just packed with wounded warriors. They offered me the opportunity to continue my care back home in Ohio. So we moved. I was still in and out of the hospital, but I was doing this kind of regional care here in Columbus, Dublin. But while I was in the hospital, a couple months, few weeks had gone by, and I'm doing the walker thing. I'm in a wheelchair for a while, then I'm doing the walker thing, and I'm walking down the hall with the walker, and then I release the walker, and I take a couple steps, and then I'd kind of hold on to the walker, and those kind of baby steps. I mean, literally learning how to walk again. And yes, at the time, my youngest son, who was born right before I deployed to Afghanistan. I was there for his birth right before the deployment. I caught wind and heard rumors of him taking his first steps. So, he's standing up, and he's kind of doing the side shuffle along the couch, and now he's taking a couple steps and falling and all that kind of stuff. Now I'm like, holy shit, I am in the hospital. I'm taking a couple steps and falling, and I'm doing this kind of side shuffle. And I'm like, we're learning how to walk at the exact same time. So there was a bit of a kind of a fun, family fun joke going on that, who's going to learn to walk first between me and my youngest son at the time, Seth. But yeah, that was a motivator to keep me walking and just progress through therapy.
Yeah. And to run a marathon. Woo.
Oh yeah. And then in the fall of 2009, I'm like, okay, I'm giving myself 1 year. I'm giving myself 1 year to learn how to, get running and jogging and all that kind of stuff. So in the fall of 2009, I made myself a promise. I'm like, I'm going to run a Columbus Marathon. Now I used the word run super lightly, right? I mean, it was more of a walk jog for about 5.5 hours. but I was well enough. I had recovered enough to where I wasn't bound by like colostomy bags and all of this other stuff, because I was wearing, these, 2 different ostomy bags and just crazy stuff, appliances hanging off of my body. I got rid of all of that stuff, and after a few months, and then signed up for the Columbus Marathon, and just from walking to jogging and jogging to kind of running, and then I kind of did this like jog walk thing in the fall of 2010, and finished that marathon, which was great. I mean, it was a great accomplishment. But there was a bit of a backfall after that. I messed some stuff up because of that run, and I had to get more surgery again in a couple months after that. So there's pros and cons to pushing the limits too much. But for me, it's always been just try to push through.
Mm-hmm. So then at what point did CrossFit enter into this after this kind of recovery, and what made you, I know you became a coach.
Yep.
So what made you want to get into coaching?
So I'd always dabbled in CrossFit, some degree of functional fitness within the special operations world. Everything from, flipping tires and, rope climbs and, I never did a lot of the, barbell Olympic lift type stuff until I actually started doing, true CrossFit at a CrossFit box. But we always had some sort of, high intensity interval training or something in that functional fitness world. So I'd always dabbled in it. A lot of the guys swore by CrossFit. I was never really a big believer back in the day. This would have been, 2006 to 2009 timeframe, 2010 even, after the injury. But I had my final big surgery in February of 2011. They had to go back in, they had to reconstruct the abdominal wall and repair kind of the final repair of all of the organ damage, small intestine, large intestine, just kidneys and stuff. So they're in there messing around, and then they put my abdominal wall back together with this new technique. And it's basically they're not only are they're sewing the abdominal wall back together, that 6-pack back together, they're layering additional like muscular tissue on that incision site. So in essence, they're giving you additional muscle fiber so that my abdominal wall doesn't pull apart, which is what was happening. So they put my abdominal wall back together. The surgery started to pull apart, and then I had these crazy injuries where my stomach's just kind of stretching out. Mm-hmm. So they put me back together. They and it's tight, man. Like, I mean, my trunk strength was, I could just tell that I've got core, I've got something to work with now. And that kind of knuckleheaded guy comes back in, and it's like, okay, what can I do now to really push the limits of what they just did? So when I was at Walter Reed, after all of this stuff, there was a little Wounded Warrior CrossFit gym inside there. I mean, just the smallest little, postage stamp of a gym. And there was a guy that was running it in there. He lost his leg. He lost a leg in Iraq or something. And he was doing all this functional fitness stuff for guys that had lost their legs or their arms or whatever, and getting them, putting kettlebells overhead and doing, kettlebell deadlifts with only one leg, that they only have one leg now, just understanding what is their new normal, but still being functional and still being independent, even with these new injuries. And I found that so amazing. And I was so inspired by these guys. And I'm like, this dude doesn't have an arm. This dude doesn't have a leg. And they're still deadlifting, or they're still squatting, or they're still doing all this stuff. And I'm like, I've got to check this out. I've got to take this more seriously. So I really dove, and I'm a bit obsessive compulsive. So I was completely into the CrossFit thing. So I was reading up on all the stuff. I was going to all these gyms, and that was what allowed me to become functionally fit and adapting to my new normal with some of my range of motion issues and limitations with nerve injuries and stuff. And like I was getting stronger, and I could tell it was working. And as the months progressed, so I'm healing, but I'm actually becoming like more functionally fit than I was even before the injury. And I was really sold on this whole, the tenets and the foundation of CrossFit, to the point where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna start doing competitions and all this other stuff. So I did all that, and then and there was a competition in the DC area, and it was specifically for wounded warriors. It's like the CrossFit Games for wounded warriors. And they break you down into different, instead of age groups, they break you down into your limitations, right? So everybody that doesn't have an arm, you're in this group. Everybody doesn't have a leg, you're in this group. And then the relatively able-bodied athletes, which I fell into, we were in our own category. But it gave me an opportunity it gave me focus. It gave me a mission. It gave me something to, which in and of itself is healing, right? It gave me the opportunity to plan and to create a goal and to go through that planning process of achieving the goal, all of that stuff, all that kind of military planning stuff that I love. And it was healing me, and so then I started working out with these veterans, these wounded vets, and that's what got me into the coaching side. There were programs out there that were specifically CrossFit programs specifically for wounded veterans, but for me to teach a wounded veteran CrossFit stuff like at a CrossFit gym, I had to be L1. I had to get my L1. So I'm like, all right, so I went through the whole CrossFit thing. I got my level 1 creds 5-6 years ago or something. And we were running a veterans program for two or 3 years out of a gym in Dublin. And along with 2 or 3 other gyms in the DC area and in North Carolina. And a lot of these gyms are around military bases, but we would kind of travel from gym to gym and get these wounded warriors working out and doing things that they didn't think that they could do. And it was just absolutely the coolest thing. And it was a big part of my own personal journey, personal healing, and what I learned through all of that, and through kind of falling in love with CrossFit, and I've got a love-hate relationship with CrossFit. So don't get me wrong, right? I'll love it for a few months, and then I'll hate it for a few weeks, and then I'll kind of go on this roller coaster ride. And it's just because I'm getting older and I can't recover as fast. But yeah, that journey to CrossFit coaching was strictly so that I could help wounded veterans become functionally fit, independent, and increase their own quality of life.
And I love that you talked to me about changing the narrative of, instead of, with working with these wounded warriors, but changing the narrative from post-traumatic stress disorder to post-traumatic growth. So, and as you've told me too, that can also just be applied to anybody and their mindset. So just taking that kind of growth mindset. Is there anything else that you want to add about that part?
Yeah, for sure. Everybody will face some degree of trauma in their life, either financially, emotionally, the death or struggle of a loved one, your own personal health issues with, cancer survivor, major vehicle wreck incident, something like that. Somebody's going to face some level of trauma, and it's going to change your life, and you're going to have to get through it. You don't have to get shot up on a battlefield on the other side of the world to have PTSD. But don't fall into that trap of I have post-traumatic stress disorder and woe is me. And, you still need to understand, what is the new normal? How do I get through it? But try to identify, that trauma and grow from it, and try to become a better person from that experience, not only for yourself, but to help the next person that's going through that exact same struggle. And understanding what post-traumatic growth is, I think, is a narrative that we need to change with society as a whole. If you were to not know a lot about me, but you knew that I was injured in combat, you might automatically place me into this, oh, he's a veteran that's got PTSD. Let's kind of tiptoe around him, and let's not talk about this. Let's not light fireworks around him, stuff like that. I just absolutely hate that stuff. I would rather someone look at me as a survivor that is now thriving, and I'm thriving because I'm through the stress disorder, and I'm into the post-traumatic growth. So again, it's another thing that I can talk hours and hours and hours about, but it's not specific to the veteran population. Everybody goes through some level of trauma. And I don't take any degree of injury or any degree of trauma lightly. And I've talked to different coaches, and I've talked to different kind of knuckleheaded veterans, and say, this guy, this gal broke their finger, and it's absolutely traumatic to them. I don't know what their problem is, kind of deal. And I'm like, okay, well, what if that person, you don't know anything about this person, first of all. What if this person is a classical pianist that is getting ready to, play in the event of his or her lifetime, and they broke their finger? Now they can't play. It would absolutely destroy that person. And to think that, a broken finger is nothing to cry about, it's just also relative. And I think that those that have been through trauma and that have gotten through it and have grown from it, we're now charged, at least this is how I feel, I'm now charged with the responsibility of understanding and helping others through their trauma. Hey, this is what I had to do to get through my own trauma. Let's figure out what you need to do to get through yours. I had to rely on family. I had to rely on my teammates. I had to rely on finding some type of a mission that I can focus on, so that I can go through that planning process of achieving goals and making tangible steps and moving forward. It's you could apply that template to any type of a traumatic survivor. You just need to figure out what the techniques are, within that template for yourself. And that's the growth piece that I think we're trying to change the narrative on.
Mm-hmm. I love that perspective. It's funny that you mentioned the part about sort of comparing traumas, because I was going to ask you the question. I think there's sort of two types of people that come out of something like what you've experienced, and you illustrated it for us. There's the person that, takes someone else's problem and sort of makes it really small compared to theirs, and sort of gets bitter about it, or says like, you have no idea, look what happened to me. And then there's that other side of the coin, which you've illustrated is sort of the path that you take. It's like, you have no idea, what the perspective is of that other person, and you just have to help them get through it no matter what. So it's a great positive take on it. I love it.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we're all humans, struggling to survive on this planet for, 90 or 100 years. And, we should be helping each other out, is kind of where I'm at with all of that. And it's I call it the QOL factor, QOL, and it's the quality of life. We should all be trying to increase our QOL factor. And a lot of times we can increase our own quality of life by increasing somebody else's quality of life. And, Marcus is a great coach. And I see a lot of the positive energy and the motivation that Marcus brings to the gym, and just reminding everybody of those little things, and that's what we need to do to one another is lift each other up, but also remind each other what we've done to get through it, or where we were just a few weeks ago to where we are now, and just kind of remind each other that hey, you might not be where you think you should be, but man, look at the trail you've blazed over the last few weeks or few months. And if we can all do that for one another, man, this things are going to be so much more successful.
That's awesome. And we could talk for hours about all of your stories, but I appreciate you coming on here. First of all, I thank you for your service, and I thank you for coming on here and allowing us to share your story with people. So I
do have one quick question. Okay, and that is, Sean, I know that we do Memorial Day Murph at Shred every year. Mm-hmm. And on that day, you do something very special. And at the conclusion of this interview, we're going to splice in a speech you gave on Memorial Day for that Murph. Can you just explain what you do during Murph that is very different than a lot of people?
Oh boy. Yeah. I mean, I do a lot of kind of weird things, but
do you mean what he's wearing?
I don't know if there's anything specific that you're talking about, but
the plate.
Oh, okay. Sure. So the external visual stuff we'll talk about. I can also talk to you about kind of what I internalized to motivate me through that. But yeah, externally, I wear the vest and the body armor that I wore the day that I was shot. So it is the vest. It has the bullet holes in it. Inside the vest is the plate, the body armor that goes inside that. And the Army, in all of their glory, allowed me to keep that as a retirement gift. And so really, I wear that vest definitely during Murph. I have a lot of respect for that particular hero wad, and for Lieutenant Murphy, Mike Murphy, and just that whole story. Yeah, that's the actual. If you see me wearing a vest and running around with a vest, not only for Murph but for any type of really any hero wad, I'm going to throw that vest on in honor of that person that paid the ultimate sacrifice so that we can have what we have today. It's the least that I can do. And then internally, that mental process, because some of these hero wads aren't meant to be, hey man, I'm going to hurry up and knock this out and get the best score I can. It's not a Fran or anything like that. Hero wads to me is a journey of that person's dying minutes and the pain that they endured, or the pain that their teammates endured to get them from one point to another, and ultimately they did not make it. I want to feel that pain, and as a reminder that I am alive, and in honor of those heroes. So I usually wear my vest for every hero wad or any type of a special workout. I'll throw that vest on. It's just another reminder to me that what I went through was real, and that journey was painful, but was worth it, and that I would do it all over again if we can do stuff like this with one another at a gym, honoring and being free. Everyone would do it all again. I know they would.
And we're fortunate enough to get to do those workouts, right? We get to do them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we get to do it together. And, I think that with the Murph, CrossFit is tough, man. You got to give CrossFit a level of respect, because it is tough, and it should be. And the relationships that you find amongst patrons at a CrossFit gym are much deeper than anywhere else, because we are bleeding and we are sweating and we are crying and we are struggling together. And it's a dynamic that you don't see a lot in the outside world. Anytime you share a struggle together and get through it together, it strengthens the bond, and it kind of changes that dynamic, and that's the beauty of CrossFit for sure.
Amazing.
Thanks so much for sharing your story. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me. And yeah, I mean, anytime you want to do an extended edition or just sit around and and
I'd love to have your wife on and hear her perspective too.
I think that would be cool. One thing that I want to make sure that I do before we wrap this all up is just ensure that she is getting the credit that she deserves. And for every wounded warrior, for every veteran, for every combat veteran that gets a handshake and gets a thank you for your service kind of thing, which is great. Don't forget to thank the spouse, and don't forget to honor the significant other, the caregiver, the spouse, because we could not do any of this without their support and honestly their grit. I relied on Sarah to put a boot in my ass on many occasions when I was just being a baby, just kind of whining and crying about stuff, and her motivation and my family's motivation. So don't forget to honor and thank the spouse or the significant other of that veteran for their service.
Yep. And you get to do that on Sunday. It's Valentine's Day, don't forget.
Oh yeah, very good. Yeah.
Well, Sean, I do this podcast because I love to talk, and your story has me speechless, and that is very rare for me. Thank you for your service. Thanks, Sarah, for doing what she does, and thank you for coming on the show.
Well, thank you. No, thank you for having me and spreading the word of what it means to serve and sacrifice and grow from trauma. I think that's the biggest thing.
Most definitely. All right. Thanks again, Sean.
All right. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Here.